Welcome back, subscribers. Jake here. Currently, we're on day 146 of Russia's disastrous invasion of Ukraine, and I want to share a tweet with you from one of my favorite Twitter accounts. This is Darth Putin, and 2 days ago he tweeted, "Day 144 of my 3-day war. I have 99 problems, and every one of them is a HIMARS. I remain a master strategist." And here's a map that I think accurately illustrates what's currently happening to the Russian front lines, and Russian forces are moving the train offload points out of these 70-kilometer missile HIMARS range. This image gives an indication of how this affects delivery times for artillery units. The conclusion is the transport times have now basically doubled, so they either need twice the amount of trucks to be able to keep up with the same rate of delivery that the Russians were firing with prior to 2 weeks ago. So in the last 2 weeks, Ukraine has probably struck about 30 Russian ammunition depots, command posts, and fuel warehouses. So Russia doesn't have a counter for these HIMARS missiles. They can't accurately shoot them down with their air defense systems. So Russia's solution is just to push their ammunition depots back out of this 70-kilometer HIMARS range. This is going to greatly affect their rates of resupplying their artillery units. And I just want to make a quick comment because I feel like on the internet, people have seen these images of Ukrainian fields completely decimated with artillery rounds. But I see pictures like these on the internet, and I think that the Russian forces are just incompetent. This one picture contains hundreds, if not thousands, of artillery rounds that hit nothing. There's no Ukrainian buildings or trenches or military installations anywhere in this photo. So all of these artillery rounds, they took time and they took money to manufacture somewhere in Russia. They took time and they took money to transport by rail into Ukraine. They took time and money to load and then unload from a truck, and then they took time and money to have an artillery unit fire it into this empty field in Ukraine, wasting the round. This is how kind of incompetent that the Russian military is, that they're just firing as much as they can on absolutely everything because they have no delusions that they can accurately fire and hit what they want to hit. So by pushing back these ammunition depots even farther away, it's going to get harder and harder for their very inaccurate artillery units to resupply and keep firing. And all of this is dependent on Ukraine not getting 300-kilometer missiles for the M270 and the HIMARS rocket systems. I think eventually the 300-kilometer missiles will arrive, and Ukraine will immediately start using these missiles to strike any depots outside of the 70-kilometer range. And Vladimir Putin has now ordered his warships to run away from Ukraine after, once again, they're anticipating these 300-kilometer missiles coming. So this will cover all of Crimea in addition to the Kerch Bridge. So what is Russia's solution? And it's just to retreat. Russia's Black Sea Fleet continues their retreat following the defeat of the Battle of Snake Island. The Kremlin has now reportedly withdrawn a number of warships from their military port in Sevastopol to the city of Novorossiysk. This is in Russia. So here is the naval base Sevastopol in occupied Crimea. This is within the 300-kilometer range that Ukraine now might potentially possess. So Putin has ordered his ships to retreat back to Russian territory. And the belief is because the Department of Defense has told the Ukrainians don't use these missiles to strike inside Russia or threaten Russian territory. We don't want this to escalate on the side of the Russian side to potentially using nuclear weapons or other forms of WMD. But if Russia is going to play this game, when we look at this map right here, if they're just going to relocate their ammunition depots to just inside Russian territory, thinking they're safe, thinking that Ukraine will be restrained and not use them, I think eventually, if this war drags on another 6 months, eventually a discussion will be had, and Ukraine will start striking military targets just inside the Russian border, potentially just inside the Belarusian border, in order to get these ammunition depots, fuel warehouses, radar installations, and air defense systems. I think it's inevitable, but as long as there is still top priority targets within Ukraine itself and within Crimea, then they're going to hold off on going after the Russian proper targets. Now, in this video, I want to tackle the very serious topic of how exactly does Russia win this war? And I'm going to take the Russian position serious that they are trying to win, and they're trying to win according to their own stated objectives. Now, most people in the comments section that perhaps support Russia and think Russia is kicking ass, I think they are delusional enough to believe that some kind of grand surrender ceremony is going to occur in the next couple months. Zelensky will be taken into custody, flown to Moscow for some kind of grand surrender ceremony similar to Nazi Germany in World War II or the Japanese Empire on the deck of the USS Missouri. And Germany and Japan in World War II are the exceptions. Most wars do not end with one side drafting a new constitution in which they must remain demilitarized forever. Most wars just end with a ceasefire. Whatever the military has taken at that point, both sides agree that to continue fighting isn't worth the cost, and they just stop fighting with a new border being drawn. That is how most wars end. And that, at this point, is Russia's best case scenario, but it's not the stated objectives that they gave when the war broke out. So if you listen to Vladimir Putin's speech back in February, if you watch Kremlin state TV, Kremlin propaganda from February, this was their 4 stated objectives for invading Ukraine. So we're going to go through each one of these. Number 1, stop NATO expansion. Number 2, demilitarize Ukraine. Number 3, protect the people of the Donbass region. And 4, denazify Ukraine. Let's start with number 1, and I don't know how you can measure this as being anything other than an abject failure. Finland and Sweden are set to join NATO. They're in the club. They're in the alliance. There's no going back. So here is the old Russia-NATO border prior to Finland and Sweden joining. Obviously, there was the enclave of Kaliningrad, the border along Latvia and Estonia, and then a little bit up here because of Norway. But with Sweden and Finland joining, the Baltic Sea is now de facto a NATO lake, and Russia is now adding a 1,000 kilometer plus border between their northern region and Finland. NATO is now 50 kilometers from St. Petersburg, basically. So this is a complete disaster. This is a complete failure for Russia strategically, no matter how you look at it. Additionally, Europe is now on high alert. The NATO alliance has re-solidified, reinvigorated itself, increased budgets, increased funding. Poland is set to acquire 500 of these HIMARS missile systems. Germany has committed to spending an additional 100 billion euros on their defense. Germany, in response to Russian aggression, is rearming itself, which I feel like on the European continent should give everyone hesitation and pause. And people who support Russia like to view that this is some kind of duality, that Russia's military strength is roughly equal to that of NATO, and if they were to go head-to-head, it would be a competitive battle. And no, it wouldn't by any metric. NATO's combined military budget every year is over $1 trillion. Meanwhile, Russia is only spending $70 billion. So yes, Russia has the most nukes in the world, 6,000 deployable warheads, but if this isn't a nuclear-armed conflict in which everyone dies, if it's a conventional war, Russia has exposed itself. It's proven that it can't effectively dominate the skies, its navy is more or less useless, and its ground forces are incompetent. All they can do is blanket artillery and slowly advance. That is not effective or strategic warfare. Additionally, what about the question of Ukraine someday joining NATO? And I argue that even if Russia, best case scenario, gets a ceasefire and gets to keep the land that they've so far taken, Ukraine is still at some point in the future going to join NATO. It's in their strategic best interest to join NATO for the alliance guarantees, but also I think NATO really wants Ukraine to join because Ukraine now has the most combat veteran fighting experience, most intelligence, most capability going to war with Russia, and Russia, we all can admit this now, is the counterbalance, is the main adversary of the NATO alliance. Russia is the only country in the world threatening the European continent. So I don't see Ukraine, whether it's 2 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, eventually Ukraine will join NATO. So their first stated objective by every measurement has been a complete failure. There's no going back. They can't undo what has already been set in motion. The second objective is to demilitarize Ukraine, to weaken the Ukrainian military so that it can no longer threaten Russia or threaten the ethnic Russians in the Donbass region. And I'm gonna make the argument for you in this video that the Ukrainian military today has a higher military capability than it did 6 months ago. When you just think about the attitude of the average person towards their military, in addition to volunteers and conscripts amassing a 1 million troop force, there are tens of thousands of Ukrainian soldiers receiving special training in Poland, receiving training in the United Kingdom, receiving training in the United States. All of those soldiers being trained on different weapon systems are going to return to Ukraine, share that knowledge, increase the country's warfighting capabilities. And yes, Russia has destroyed a lot of stuff, but Russia is incapable of destroying Ukraine's industrial military manufacturing capacity because it's not within the borders of Ukraine. Unless Russia is willing to bomb Germany, bomb France, bomb the United States to destroy our munition factories, then they can't stop Ukraine from rearming itself. For every tank that potentially Russia destroys, 2 better, more modern, more capable tanks are just going to be replaced with it by the West. The arms are never going to stop flowing into Ukraine, even if Russia achieves a ceasefire and is able to hold on to the land they take. The Ukrainian military is never going to stop arming itself up to the max. This is now a patriotic war. This is a war for survival. The Ukrainian military is never going to draw down as long as Russian forces continue to occupy some of their sovereign territory. So in every metric that you can use to measure this, to demilitarize Ukraine, I would argue that Russia has failed. The third one is going to get very bizarre. I've never understood this, but Russia is claiming that they invaded Ukraine in order to protect the Donbass region, to protect the ethnic Russians who speak Russia within the Donbass region. And this is what the city of Mariupol looks like. Russia destroyed 90 to 95% of the buildings. The city doesn't have running water or electricity. All of its economic capacity has been completely destroyed forever. It's going to take a lot of funding and a lot of time to rebuild this city. This is what the city of Severodonetsk looks like. Once again, Russia completely destroyed 90 to 95% of all the structures. No running water, no electricity, complete devastation for this town. And the city of Severodonetsk and the Luhansk Oblast and the city of Mariupol and the Donetsk Oblast, these are in the Donbass region. These are part of the Donbass region. These are supposed to be the ethnic Russian towns, the Russian-speaking towns that are supposed to be pro-Russian. And this is what the Russian military did to these towns, did to these people. If you want to take the highest figures that Russia claims the Ukrainian military has been slaughtering ethnic Russians in the Donbass region, I think they gave numbers as high as maybe 14,000. In February, Russia was calling what the Ukrainian military did a genocide of ethnic Russians in the Donbass region. If you take the most extreme fabricated number that Russia claims, they've easily 5 or 10x that, killing civilians in the Donbass region, both Mariupol and Severodonetsk. Russia, the Russian military, has killed way more ethnic Russians by a factor of 5 to 10 in 6 months than the Ukrainian military did slowly over 8 years of fighting. Additionally, if this war really was about protecting people and protecting the ethnic Russians, then Russia could have just taken all the people from the city of Donetsk and Luhansk and relocated them to inside Russia. This was always financially, logistically capable because they're currently doing that now. So here's an article titled "US Calls on Russia to Stop These Filtration Camps." These are forced deportations of Ukrainian citizens. So whenever Russia takes a territory, takes a town, they confiscate, they apprehend all the people, and then force them to go back to Russia. And according to the US State Department, they estimate between 900,000 and 1.6 million Ukrainians have been forced by the Russian military to go to Russia. Ukraine puts this number closer to 2 million. But if the Russian military was always capable of relocating 2 million people in the Donbass region to inside Russia, then there was no need for this conflict. There was no need for this war. Russia always could have saved these people by peacefully relocating them or allowing them into Russia. But of course, this isn't what this war is really about. Russia wants this land, they want this territory. There are huge natural gas and oil reserves under the Donbass region, close to Izium, Sloviansk, and Kramatorsk. This is what the Russian military wanted all along. They don't really care about these people. So as far as protecting the cities, protecting the people of the Donbass, they've slaughtered way more than, even if you were to argue the Ukrainian government was a Nazi government out to get the ethnic Russians of this region. The fourth argument, I can't really even say with a straight face, the objective to denazify the government or denazify Ukraine. If you look hard enough in any country, there are going to be idiots, white supremacists with Nazi tattoos, flying Nazi flags. These are neo-Nazis in America, flying the Nazi flag along with the Confederate flag at their stupid rallies. If you look hard enough in Russia, you're going to find neo-Nazis. And to argue that the Ukrainian government is in any way fascist or Nazi-like when they are led by a Jewish man who had relatives killed by the Nazis in the Holocaust, I think Ukraine as a nation, more than any other country, lost more people in the Holocaust. I think the number is over 1 million Ukrainian Jews were killed by the Nazis. So there's no love, there's no sympathy for the Nazis in Ukraine. So this argument, this propaganda, I don't know how anyone can take it serious. However, history will be the judge of this conflict. History will come for Russia and analyze everything they did. The mass graves will be found. The pictures of the rubble and destruction from the Russian military advancing across Ukraine. History is going to remember Russia as being the fascist, authoritarian, Nazi-like government rounding up and killing innocent civilians. So these are the 4 stated objectives of the Russian military given at the time of the invasion in order for them to win this war. And I'm arguing that these are impossible. It's literally impossible for the Russian military to win given their 4 stated objectives. Now, is it possible for the Russian military to keep slowly gobbling up land and then potentially go to Zelensky, go to Western leaders, and beg for a ceasefire, beg for an armistice in which they get to keep the Donbass region and the land bridge to Crimea. Sure, it's possible, but how likely is it? I don't think after everything that Russia has done, bombing schools, bombing hospitals, bombing churches, I just don't see Western leaders putting the pressure or withdrawing the support for the Ukrainian government, and I don't see Zelensky or any future Ukrainian government agreeing to just give up 20% of their people, 20% of their territory. So the fight is going to continue until Russia realizes that their war, according to their own stated objectives, is unwinnable. At some point, there has to be an honest discussion in the Kremlin that they can't win this war, and the longer they stay in, strategically, economically, the worse off Russia becomes every day. Let's wrap up this video on a high note, and I want to share a marriage proposal from a Ukrainian soldier. His name is Roman, and he's proposing to his very lovely girlfriend here. Let's just watch this video together. If you want to show some love and show some support for Roman on Instagram, here's his page. I'll link it down below in the description. Glory to the heroes, glory to Ukraine. That's all for this update video. If you found it informative, give me a thumbs up. I greatly appreciate it. If you have any comments or questions or know something I don't, let me know in a comment down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, take care, be safe.